everyone, it's Alice, and since the holidays are not too far away, today we're gonna do this year's book gift guide. We're just gonna dive straight into this because I have a lot of books to show you, some of which I think may have appeared in previous book gift guides, but most of them have not. And as usual, I've split this into 3 different parts, although this year I have sneakily added like a mini category, so I guess it's technically like 3.5 parts. Either way, the first category is books most people would enjoy, and these are books that I feel you'd be pretty safe to give to just about anyone. Like, they're really good, but they're not too weird or too out there, if you know what I mean. First up here, we have got one of my favorite books that I've read this year, and it is This Green and Pleasant Land by Ayesha Malik. And this is a contemporary fiction novel, and it's set in this small English village where we meet this family. And the father of the family has just lost his mother, and his mother had a dying wish, and it was that she wanted her son to return to his faith by building a mosque in the little village that he lives in. So he sets out to do this, and that causes quite the divide in the community and quite a lot of ruckus, if you will. This is an absolutely fantastic read. It's got a lot of interesting themes and a lot of interesting discussions, and it's filled with interesting characters, and I just love it. I think it's a great book to discuss, and it's very layered and interesting, but not too complicated to get into. I still think about this book all the time, and there's one character in particular that has really stuck with me from this book. It's an aunt that we meet, and I still think about her all the time because I just loved her so much, and I love this book so much. Secondly, we have got The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, and I talk about this book loads because it's just so fun and entertaining, and the story is set in this retirement village where we meet a group of pensioners who love gathering and discussing true crime, and they end up in the middle of a murder investigation when a murder happens right in their village, basically. The characters in here are just lovely. They're like old people who don't give a fluff about what anyone thinks of them, and it's just really, really fun. Also, even though the characters in here are elderly, this can obviously be a really fun read for any adult. Like, I am no close to retirement age, and I still really liked it. So I think that most people would enjoy this if they like cozy mysteries. Next, I of course have to recommend one of my new favorite books. It is Miss Benson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce, and this is historical fiction. It's set in the 50s, and we meet this English woman in her 40s who suddenly realizes that she is very unhappy with her life and she hasn't done any of the things that she wanted to, and she just like out of nowhere really quits her job quite dramatically and decides to go on this adventure to try and find this undiscovered beetle that she has dreamed of finding her whole life. She needs an assistant to go with her though, because she's traveling across the world, and she hires this woman who turns out to be not quite what she had imagined, but either way they find each other and off they go together on this adventure. This is a wonderful story about friendship, and actually when I reviewed this book I got a comment that made a really good point. The book is also about kindness, which I feel is kind of rare, and there is a lot of things going on in this book. It's exciting and engaging, but at its core it's a story about 2 women who are very different from one another, and they're both imperfect, but they come together and they sort of find common ground and they do this amazing thing together. Fair warning, this is a little bit heartbreaking at the end, but it's definitely worth it, and I just feel like this whole book is just gold. Next, we have got a romance book for once, which is quite a rare occurrence on this channel, but this book really is top-notch, and it is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. To be fair, this book is quite popular, so I do know a lot of people have read it, but if you know someone who hasn't, I think this makes a great gift. It's set in Greece during the Age of Heroes, and we meet Patroclus, who has been exiled from his home and sent to live in the court of King Peleus, who is the father of Achilles, who is about to become his lifelong companion. This is a truly beautiful book. Like, the writing is astonishing, and it's just a wonderful story about love, and it's very emotional. It's kind of a hard book to sort of sum up in words, but it's one of the few romance books that I've read that I've absolutely fallen in love with. Then we have got a nonfiction book, and it is The Spy and the Traitor by Ben McIntyre. And this is a wonderfully engrossing book. It's the true story of a KGB agent who grew up in the Soviet Union, and as he grew older, he started to see the flaws in the system of his country and the corruption of it, and because of that, he decided to become a double agent for the British, supplying them with information about what life was really like behind the Iron Curtain. And all of this work that he did eventually led him to having to escape his own country. I'd say that if I was gonna give any of the books in this video to like my dad, it would be this one. Like, obviously anyone can enjoy this book. I read it and I loved it, but I just feel like this is one of those books that fits my dad's generation really well and they would find it very intriguing. This is like actually very exciting though, and it gets really, really nerve-wracking towards the end, and I was on the edge of my seat when I was reading this book. And it's fascinating, and it gives us a very interesting look into a part of our history. Then I've got that little mini category that I mentioned that I've sneakily put in here. And I've done this because it's been a year, you know? Technically almost 2 years of things being a bit rough in the world. So I've added this category that I've named Books for Your Friend Who Needs a Break. And this basically just means straight up escapism, like nothing too complicated, just pure fun. I've got these two books, the first one being The Smoke Hunter by Jacqueline Benson, and anyone who saw me review this book will know how much I absolutely love this book. It's basically Indiana Jones meets Lara Croft meets The Mummy, like all mixed together, which like what more can you possibly ask for? It starts off in England in 1898, and we meet this woman who works as an archivist, even though she's been educated to work as an archaeologist. But because she's a woman, no one will let her work as that, even though she still dreams of working as one. And when she's in the office one day, she comes across this map, and she sees her opportunity to make her mark in the world, and she feels like if she can find what this map leads to, it will make her career. So she basically steals it and sets off on this adventure to find whatever the map leads to. She's not the only one who knows of this map though, and she's not the only one who wants to get there first. So it becomes a race to get there and not get killed along the way. This is thrilling, super entertaining, and filled with like ancient culture and mysteries and adventure, and it's got really interesting characters and a lot of suspense. It is a little bit over the top sometimes, but let's be honest, so is Indiana Jones, and it's the kind of book that you can just like get sucked into. You can sit down and read and just not have to think and have a great time. The second one I've got is Crocodile on the Sandbank by Elizabeth Peters, and this is also set in the late 1800s, and we meet this woman who has just lost her father and she's come into an inheritance, and she decides that she wants to see the world. So she sets out and travels, and on the way she like meets a woman who is in distress who she picks up and takes in, and they become friends, and they end up in Egypt and in the middle of this mystery with a really creepy mummy. This is just delightful. It's light and fun and charming, and I loved reading about the historical settings in here and all of the archaeology stuff, and I absolutely love the characters in this book. I also just want to add that you can easily buy these books as a gift for yourself as well if you also need a break, because same. Moving on, we have got my favorite category, which is books for your weird friends. And these are books that are a little bit more particular, if you will. Like, I feel like you'll know if one of these books are the right fit for one of your friends because maybe they're interested in more specific or peculiar things. And these are fantastic books that are maybe not for everybody, but it's like they make great gifts for the right person, you know? First up here, we have got a lovely little book called Crazy for Birds by Misha Meiernick Blaze. And this is basically just a beautifully illustrated book all about different kinds of birds. So we get to read about these different birds' lives and what they get up to and what they look like. And I think, you know, birds are pretty cool, as long as they don't come near me. But I feel like maybe not everyone is as interested in that, you know? But I feel like this would make a great gift for someone who either likes birds or appreciates like really, really beautiful artwork. And it's just a lovely little book. It's delightful, it's easy to read, wonderful to flip through, and I feel like you'll know if you have someone in your life who would appreciate this. Secondly, we have got a science book, and it is The Order of Time by Carla Rovelli. And you can actually test your friend to see if this is the book for them. You can tell them or ask them if they know that time doesn't move the same everywhere. And if they don't care, this isn't the book for them. But if they do, if their eyes go a bit wide and they their heads explode a little bit just thinking about that, this is the perfect book for them. It's basically just a science book all about space and time and how none of this stuff works at all the way we think it does. Then we've got a book about death for your friends who used to be emo but no longer look like that, but they're still emo on the inside, if you know what I mean. And it's From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty. And this is a nonfiction book that's absolutely fascinating, a little bit morbid, but very, very interesting. It explores death rituals from all around the world. So this author is a mortician, and she has basically traveled all around the world to see how different people and different cultures deal with their dead. And this was a very eye-opening read for me. I didn't know any of this stuff, and it's absolutely fascinating. I will say the writing style of this is like a little bit particular. It's actually like really funny. So you have to have a slightly morbid sense of humor, I feel, to sort of get on with this, but I absolutely loved it. I thought it was super funny and surprisingly not as dark as you'd think it would be. Moving on, we have got The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bithell, and this is perfect for anyone who enjoys bookshops or works in retail, or does both, I guess. It's a memoir in a type of like diary format, and the author of this is the owner of the largest secondhand bookshop in Scotland. And we basically get to peek into his life for a year and see what he gets up to, and we get to meet his eccentric customers and read about all the funny interactions that he has, and we get a peek into the book world and the book trade. It's perfect for anyone who enjoys a sort of dry sense of humor, and it's very charming. Second to last in this category, we have The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham, and this is one of my favorite dystopian novels. It's set in a world where there are these carnivorous plants called triffids that are kind of dangerous if you leave them alone, but as long as you trim them right, it's fine, and it's actually quite trendy to keep them in your backyard, but you need to keep them on a leash because they can actually pick up their roots and walk around. And all of that is fine, like they keep it under control. But then, of course, something happens. There is a meteor shower, and anyone who looks at that meteor shower goes blind, which is a bit of a problem in and of itself, but it's especially a problem when these plants start getting loose and start taking over. Obviously, a book about walking plants might not be for everyone, but this really is very good and oddly realistic, which makes it even more terrifying. And we sort of get to see the slow disintegration of society, which is fascinating. Lastly, we have got Misery by Stephen King, and I do know that this is quite a popular book, but I wouldn't give this to just anyone. Like, I feel like it's not for everyone because it's horror and it's quite gruesome, and it's for a particular audience, in my opinion. The story in here is about this world-famous author who gets into an accident and is saved by a woman proclaiming to be his biggest fan. And she gets quite upset with him because she reads his latest book where he kills off her favorite character. And she's a bit off her rocker, so she decides to keep him in her house until he fixes his mistake. The characters in this book are fascinating, and I really like the way the emotions of the characters were written in this book, and the woman in here is bonkers. Like, she is absolutely crazy, and she's very unpredictable, which makes the story more suspenseful, and it's like really terrifying, and the book gets really gruesome and dark towards the end. So like, don't give this to your super flowery friend who doesn't like horrible stuff, you know? Do give it to that friend who really enjoys those things though, because they would love this. We've then made it to the final category, which is books that are perfect as gifts. And these are basically books that are perfect as gifts because they're both really beautiful and good, and so they just make an extra special gift because they're beautiful on the outside and on the inside. And I've picked a bunch of different stuff this year, so we're just gonna go through all of it. Firstly, we have these seasonal poetry books, and these are gorgeous, and they contain poetry for each season, and they're laid out so that you're supposed to read a couple of poems a day, which I really like. And you can pick like someone's favorite season and give them the corresponding book, or you can just pick the one that you feel like looks the best or would fit your friend or family member the best. And I just think these books are gorgeous, and like, who wouldn't like getting a gift like this? Secondly, we have got some graphic novels and some illustrated books. And the first two are these two graphic novels by Isabel Greenberg. So we have The 100 Nights of Hero and Glass Town. And these are beautiful, like, hardbacks. And I will say the stories in here are kind of weird, so maybe find the right friend to give this to. But like, if you find that friend, they're gonna love these books. They are fully illustrated in color, and the stories are really unique, and they're not too much effort to read, you know, it's just really fun and interesting, and you get to look at all this cool artwork. Then we have got Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, and I've actually given this book to several people because I just think it makes the perfect gift book, and it contains stories about 100 extraordinary women, all of which are illustrated. And this is the kind of book that you can sort of dip in and out of, and you get to read about all these cool women, which is great. Another beautifully illustrated book is Winter Tales, and this contains folk tales from all over the world, which is really cool. And there are several different countries and cultures represented in here, and the illustrations are just to die for. It's so beautiful, and all of these stories are really cool. Some of them I was familiar with and some of them I weren't, so it was nice to sort of dip in and out of, and like, it's just beautiful. My very last tip of the day though is simple but pretty effective, I feel, and it's to give someone a beautiful edition of a classic. Either a classic you know they like or one you think they would like, and there are so many different beautiful editions of all kinds of different classics, so you can just sort of find one that you think sort of fits their style. Some examples of some beautiful classics are Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, which comes in this absolutely beautiful paperback. We have Animal Farm by George Orwell, which comes in this cloth-bound hardcover type book. And then Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which is again a beautiful paperback. There are loads more out there to choose from. Obviously, these are just some of my favorites, and you can find just about any classic in a cool edition, which I think makes a really nice gift. Okay everyone, that was it for this year's book gift guide. I hope some of you found this helpful, and I would of course love to know if you can think of a book that you feel like would make the perfect gift, or if you've already bought some books for your friends and family for the holidays. I would love to know what you got them. And as usual, links to my Patreon and other social media will be in the description if you're interested, and I will see you soon. Bye!